Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. It's a very special episode because it's that time of year again. You can feel the anticipation building. Stockings are hung on the chimney with care, ports of dancing sugar plums. But we aren't quite to Christmas Eve yet, so indeed, on this December 16th, we still have creatures stirring, 4 old gamers to be exact. And because we're super excited for this episode number 222, the Enough to Keep Going podcast, I am Swiss Guard. And yes, we finally made it to the last episode of the year. As always, a crew favorite, the 5th annual Gaming Superlative Awards. Yay! All right, joining me are DBQ Hams. How are you doing, DB?
I'm doing well. Thanks for hosting tonight. I think this is. I have spent the last 2 years putting this together, so it's nice to just be in the show. So looking forward to it, and good way to start us off.
Well, there's actually also very good reasons for that, but we'll get to them in a minute when we cover the rules. Of course, all 4 of us are on, so Time Master 99, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to do a 5-hour show tonight.
Not if I can help it. And finally, we have Game Logic manning the streams, as it were.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
I think we're all doing adequately. All right, so yes, this is the Superlative Awards. It is an award show, but it's our own flavor of award show. We take a little bit of a different tack than a lot of the gaming media outlets. We don't have like categories like best action game or best music, and in a way, we don't even restrict ourselves to like a official game of the year category. We have a little bit more variety, and the categories themselves are kind of open to interpretation to each individual host, which produces a range of games, and that is part of the fun. So here are the rules. We stick to games from 2021, mostly because we can bend the rules. We pick games that we played ourselves for the most part, but not necessarily. And finally, as your host, I've collected all the results, so my friends here do not know what the picks are, and that is the real part of the fun. And I think that's probably why DV is so excited. He's not in the know this time.
It's the unknown, right? It's just like Christmas morning.
It is, actually.
And just to add on that, just so any listeners or viewers don't think that some of the things we put categories in are like games that we're unfamiliar with. Correct me if I'm wrong. We pick games that we've played, with the exception of specific categories that are kind of global and they don't require actual gameplay.
Yeah, we have our finger on the pulse of the industry. So, but yeah, so it changes from category to category, and we'll get right to it. So, the first category is the biggest surprise game. And this would be one that we played because it's generally going to be a game that we weren't expecting to enjoy. Or I guess somebody could interpret that in a negative way, glass half empty. But generally speaking, historically it's been a positive one. Let's start with you, DB.
All right, so mine is something that caught me by surprise this fall. I had known about it over the summer, found out about some of their release catalog, and this is a mid-size French publisher, Microdes. And my biggest surprise are 2 of their licensed properties this semester. Look at that. I am so much in the vein of this is finals week, people. Woo! Okay, so my biggest surprise, if I have to limit it down to a game, is Smurfs Mission Relief. So this was a complete shock to me. I thought this was going to be a cheap cash license game, just a cash in, and it turned out to be the most enjoyable. Ooh, I am going to say this. My most enjoyed 3D platformer of the year. That more so than Bowser's Fury, even. And it plays out like Mario Sunshine to a certain degree. A little bit of Luigi's Mansion mixed in there, but it is surprisingly not only competent but just fun. And I beat it. I've gone back to unlock things. It was just a real joy and a surprise, and something that I thought was just going to be an IP grab.
I mean, I'll be honest, it was a surprise for me to see it come across the list. So, but that's why we play the games, right? So, and Towmaster 99, you had it's a surprise, but it's not a surprise.
Yes. Yeah, it's this. So I picked Rocket League Sideswipe. That's the mobile game that just actually recently came out, and obviously, if you've watched the show, I'm huge into Rocket League. It's like pretty much on my list almost all the time, playing it all the time. But this one I wasn't too sure because it's a mobile game. It's only like you fix them on screen, almost kind of a side. I don't say side scrolling, but you just move side to side, right and left. And I just thought, I don't know, this looks kind of weird. Like it's not 3D. You're not zooming all over the court and a 3D arena or anything like that. But after playing it, it's actually pretty addictive. I've next just another one now. I've added to my my list of games, or definitely mobile games that I play almost pretty much every day since it's come out. And it's just a fun little game. It's like about 3 minutes to play. I think is the time limit they even set, maybe 4, I think. But pretty quick. You're done fairly quickly. I think the one thing too is that I don't think the clock stops when you're actually playing. So I think it is 3 minutes. So it's just like a straight 3 minutes. You got to go and get those goals, or you do whichever you got to do. There's only a couple modes right now, but I was actually really surprised. There's a couple other things on the list that I actually were gonna pick, but actually I picked them for later things. But this one went out on for the biggest surprise game. So I was definitely surprised on this one for me.
Nice. And I was, for Game Logic's pick, I was actually super happy to see this one come across. So Game Logic, what was your biggest surprise of 2021?
Yeah, my biggest surprise was actually a remaster or remake. I think this is maybe arguably the first time a remaster or remake has made my list in the last 5 years. Maybe Resident Evil made it the 1 year it came out, maybe. But my pick was actually Death Stranding Director's Cut. So this was a game that myself and many other members of our cast completely laid off of, just because it had in my opinion, it had a messaging problem just in the way it was conveyed to the gaming public, and it was an effort to play, I've got a secret and make it a little seem like something that would appeal to the most pretentious type of gamer. And I actually found while playing through the game that there are many systems in the game that are very similar to more mainstream things, but it puts them all together in very interesting ways, and kind of weaves them all together under a scaffolding of a very, I don't want to say unique story, but a very well-told story and narrative. So, yeah, that was my biggest surprise game. I was absolutely floored by how much I enjoyed Death Stranding Director's Cut on the PlayStation 5.
Nice. So my pick for biggest surprise game was Dungeon Encounters from Square Enix, and mostly because I kind of saw it come across my radar, and I was like, well, this I guess it's kind of a JRPG, kind of not, but it came across my radar. That might be interesting, but it was so minimalistic, so I thought it could go, it could be really bad. But I just happened to have some GameStop gift credit at the time that it came across my radar, so I didn't feel so bad picking it up. And I was surprised at how often I was playing it. Just straight up systems, walk through fight battles. There's no, flashy graphics or anything. The one single sprite picture of a character will vibrate if they get hit. That's about it. So, but it's well built. I enjoy the battle system, and I just like the. I think when we talked about it earlier this year, I like the zen of just like going in and playing the game. So for me, it was such a surprise because one, like, given the pedigree of the guys developing it, it's kind of just a weird game to come across. Like, and it was a surprise that it was released in 2. It was I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed playing it. All right, we'll move on to the second category, which Game Logic actually alluded to. And this category is New Lease on Life or Best Ported Game. So, in some ways also, like, this can encompass like gamings as a service we've interpreted in the past, but in this era there's a lot of ported stuff, and re-releases and remakes, and that's what we got here. Tao, why don't you start us off on this category?
Okay, so I did something a little different with this one. So I kind of went the New Lease on Life, and not for a particular game, but more of just games in general. So after like the year last year of just like I had like an ungodly amount of playtime on like most of my systems, especially on the Switch, and even this year I've been playing a lot. Yeah, I was kind of like, I've been playing games, and it's just been like, yeah, okay, I've nothing really ever really jumped out at me until I got a VR headset, the Quest or Meta Quest 2, and I started playing those games, and that kind of got me excited again about gaming. I guess it's just kind of the physicality of it. Something different. I'm not just sitting here in a chair, with a controller or keyboard and mouse. No offense to anybody, and I still play those games, but I like that kind of like we connect, kind of having to move around and actually be physical. Not that I'm not a big like health nut or anything, but I just like the physicality of the games and just kind of like the interactions and that those games kind of give you. So that's why I chose just VR games in general. Like there's multiple games that I've played, shooters and puzzle games and all kinds of other things. So it's just brought that kind of excitement back to me, and I'm like constantly looking at what's coming up in the future. There's a couple or no, I shouldn't say a couple. There's one, the MMO that looks pretty good, coming up. So I'm really excited about these VR games and what they bring to the table.
So help me out. So what is your pick for new? Like, is it gaming in general, or
it's just gaming in general? Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So DB has a more conventional pick, I think.
I do, and I really thought about this because if I think about the best ported game, my choice is clearly the Mass Effect trilogy. That worked out very well, really revitalized just the graphical sheen of it after playing through some of halfway through Mass Effect 2 early in the year for a Pix Plays assignment, and being able to come in and witness the port and the high res aspects on a 4K TV. Very nice. But honestly, when it came down to it, it's the New Lease on Life category here that gets me, and that's Castlevania Advance Collection. I loved the GBA 3 Ikarashi Castlevanias, and they've been increasingly hard to find and expensive if you're trying to actually buy an original one and not a kind of a ROM one off of eBay. So being able to have them all with a little bit of rewind and save states and a better screen resolution is excellent. And on the Switch. So they still maintain that kind of portability. And so that is my New Lease on Life pick.
And was that a game? Is that a game, or is that something that came out on the NES or Super NES?
No, it's a collection because it's out on Xbox and PlayStation.
Oh, wow.
It's out on at least one other console and Steam.
Okay.
As
cool.
well.
Very cool.
My pick this year for New Lease on Life Best Ported Game is Nier Replicant, and I think a couple of years ago I had a lot of fun with Nier Automata. So when I saw this one come out, I did not play it back in the day on I guess it was the PS3. So I picked it up and immediately had all the good vibes of Nier Automata and actually exceeded them with some of the storytelling and the characters. So this was actually a very easy category for me personally to choose. So, I really just love the combat in these games. It's so fluid and quick. All right, Game Logic, what do you got for us?
So for me, and this is kind of interesting for the whole show because I think for anybody who's watched the show, I spent a large chunk of this year playing Call of Duty, Black Ops Cold War, and didn't really have much time for anything else until like September. So almost all of my gaming happened in the last month of Q3 and Q4. But one of the things that I did check out while I was playing Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, I did dabble in some other games as a service type games, and there's been a whole torrid story of like what games and when have been getting next gen upgrades, and one of the more positive ones I felt was Warframe, which came to the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 in next gen dressings, and the Warframe port on PlayStation 5, which is not where I play Warframe a lot. I play a fair amount on Xbox and a lot on PC. But the PlayStation 5 version was enough to get me up out of my chair and go pull it down on that system, and it's pretty gorgeous. So I've played it, on a 4K TV and on a 1440p monitor, and with my monitor, it does some downsampling and upsampling and yada 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 to work with the PlayStation 5, which was actually pretty fortunate because I got the 1440p monitor specifically for the Series S. And I was just like, I'll just suffer with the PlayStation 5 and leave it on the 4K TV. But that 1440p monitor actually takes a 4K signal, so I can play my PlayStation 5 on it in a 1440p, I guess, downsampled resolution, which still looks great. And so I don't necessarily know that ray tracing is enabled on Warframe, but whatever's on there, with all the bells and whistles, it looks pretty solid, and was enough to get me interested to stick my head back in that sweater for a little bit this year.
Very cool. So we've had a couple of positive categories, and now we have to go the opposite. In some ways, this is my favorite category every year. But it's the most disappointing game experience. And for me, I picked this game up after I learned, there was a window where they announced that it was being pulled from Steam due to gross incompetence. And I picked it up before I picked up the demo before it was lost forever, so that I could experience the pain. And that is Balan Wonderworld. And so for me, and I think for a lot of people, the developer was the Knights developer back in the Sega day, old school Sega. I think there was some. I mean, even the artwork and the presentation kind of had a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory vibe to it, so there was something there that could have been potentially interesting, but then the game itself was just horrible. So that for me was I kind of had this on my calendar ready to go since I experienced it back in the summer as my most disappointing game experience.
Yeah, it's not a good game. No. Yeah.
Game Logic, your game was one that I almost bought, and then I saw it on this list, and then I was on a Steam, and then I saw it on the list, so I held off.
Yeah, I mean, as the category says, I was very disappointed in this, and very disappointed because it's in a genre, and it's a franchise that is squarely in my wheelhouse, and that was MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries, which I had been kind of eyeballing it because I think it came to the Epic Game Store as an exclusive, as a timed exclusive for a period of time. So it was a mech game. It was on PC, and it was in the Epic Game Store, which I'm not a hater of. but I figured I'd bide my time. I didn't jump on board with it right away. Then I saw the word that it was coming to Game Pass, and I was like, I'll just wait and play it on Game Pass. And I think it's on PC Game Pass as well. So it came over and I played it, and the two mech games that I have the fondest memories of are MechWarrior 3, and then a game called Heavy Gear 2, which was an Activision game. I can't remember who the developers of it were, but it took the mech suit and almost just scaled it up a skosh from what it would feel like to be in like an exosuit. So it wasn't this big, heavy, preponderous, battlefield mech. It was, excuse me, I had a frog stuck in my throat there for a second. They were supposed to be like a spec ops group, and there were multiple different characters in the group, so you could take a different one on different missions. My big problem with Mech Warrior, so it spanned the spectrum of kind of mech games between like heavyweight mech and Mech Warrior 3 versus kind of agile but also powerful and also very quick mech in Heavy Gear 2. And I was like, okay, if Mech Warrior 5 doesn't fit the right hand of the spectrum, surely it'll fit the left hand, and it fit neither. And my big disappointment was there's just no weight and feel to Mech Warrior 5. It just feels very floaty, very almost, I don't want to say Call of Duty like, but it feels like it skews a lot more towards a first person shooter rather than like a mech simulation game. So the reason it was the biggest disappointment is because I waited for a year almost to finally get into it, only to have a very lukewarm experience.
How I don't recall this game coming across my radar. So, what was the game that you picked for the most disappointing experience?
So this one, I actually kind of had a problem with this category just because I hadn't like played a whole lot this year. So this was kind of like like an okay game, but to me, I had to fit somewhere, or I had to choose something for this category. But it was the Falconeer on the Xbox Series X, and I believe this is one of the first supposed to be like kind of made for the Xbox Series X and S, and you kind of I had read about it and heard about it. You're flying or riding on this like giant bird, like eagle or hawk. So it's like, oh, that sounds cool. Maybe it's kind of like Panzer Dragoon kind-ish, or something like that. And just when I was playing it, like I played it that first time, I think I mentioned it. So there was something about the controls that it just felt weird to me. And it wasn't like, I mean, I could invert the controls, so that was fine. But I don't know, there was just something there that was just weird, and maybe because it was like a third person perspective, and I don't think you can go first person at all. That might have been the other issue. So you always have like these things flying at you. There's always like enemies everywhere. So you kind of like you have like a reticle on the screen too. So maybe that was kind of throwing me off. Where I'm following the reticle, but the guy is kind of still like almost looking forward. So it's like kind of weird like that. So I don't know. So that was the reason I picked this one, and just because I had to pick something on this category. So unfortunately, it was the Falconeer. So not a terrible game, but just not the best, at least not for me.
That's fine. It's okay to pick a good game that you felt you had higher expectations for. If I hadn't done Balan Wonderworld, actually, like a game like Metroid Dread might actually have slotted here for me. But I mean, again, it's a good game, and I'm going to keep playing it. But it didn't. That one was like one that didn't meet my expectations quite either. DB, you have the last pick, and it's a different genre.
Yes, it is. It is a genre and a game that I spent a lot of my chunk of time playing this year, which is the Match 3 game. So this is Puzzle Quest 3 is my most disappointing game. Big fan of the original Puzzle Quest. When I heard that Puzzle Quest 3 was coming out, it was free to play on mobile, which is already a red flag. Came out in early access, but they're taking money, so I'm putting it on the list. I played it probably pretty close to daily for at least 2, almost 3 months. And then in true early access fashion, when you do a big update and you give everybody epic gear or legendary gear just to rebalance, that was a real red flag in terms of how they rebalanced it. It was the spells system and the amount of damage, a lot of rebalancing things that made the grind a whole lot more and took away some of just the enjoyment of the match 3 puzzle. Because the match 3 puzzle was great. It's still Bejeweled, but you have, once you start moving, you have like 2 seconds to make as many moves as you want, which makes a matching game a little more active than just simply choosing one to match. And it also is a free to play game, which means there's lots of currencies, there's lots of grinding. It's difficult to finish the story without spending a whole lot of time in investing your upgrade materials, and getting upgrade materials is incredibly stingy. But maybe because it's in early access, it's not like you. Truthfully, there was a point in time when I probably would have thrown $20 at this game just to get enough upgrade material to finish the storyline, because I would have paid $20 for it if it was a Switch game. But there's not even bundles of things to give you the materials to upgrade to get beyond certain spots. So not very streamlined, not very easily accessible, but not very enjoyable, and disappointing ultimately over the course of time. I even reinstalled it twice this year just to check, see if they've changed anything. Came back to it actually this week to see just how much has changed. They definitely have added, they've changed the menus, they've modified some systems, but it is still the upgrade material is still incredibly difficult, and that path there is not very intuitive or well explained. And so what I thought was going to be a great kind of time waster side mobile game ended up just really being a big disappointment.
Well, we'll continue the theme of disappointment. So the next category, this category was originally, like, I think, conceived in the whole controversy with Battlefront 2, I think, with EA, right? But it's the Wretched Hive of Scum and Villainy award. So, game most emblematic of sleazy business practices. And I'll just go ahead and say this is the first and only unanimous category.
I almost thought we should just rename this category, because if it was going to be anybody else, I really wanted to hear the argument.
I considered one just to be contrarian, but ultimately I was like, I can't even argue. It's like I can't do the devil's advocate for it. But I've noticed we haven't even said who it is. But does anybody want to give the rundown on why Activision Blizzard is this year's winner of the Wretched Hive of Scum and Villainy Award?
I'll just, my comment, I guess I'll do it just because, and I fill out my list fairly early, just as kind of the litmus test for me to see, like, is there any problem or any hiccup that anybody else is going to hit, like, in advance, so I can talk to you guys about it. When I initially filled my list out, it was not Activision Blizzard, because it was in that brief window where they had walked back, right, their initial corporate response, and said that was wrong, and said that they were going to try and do something better, and it was after they had gotten rid of Brack, and a few of those bad eggs had left Blizzard, and it was before the codec ramifications of, like, him threatening his assistant's life and things like that. So there was a brief window where there was an argument that somebody had done something worse, right? Because Ubisoft was on the hot plate for similar things. And there was one other company, I think, that was kind of in hot water. But then after the Kotick allegations came back, I just erased whatever I had and put down Activision Blizzard. So obviously this is because of the allegations of just a completely and entirely toxic environment that is non-inclusive, predominantly about sexual harassment, but also, there are allegations which haven't been as widely publicized, but have been kind of thrown in the mix of racism and, gender discrimination and things like that. So, yeah, it's a problem. I think then they win the award for me after the Kotick accusations came out. It was just they just keeping digging a deeper hole. It's the allegations come out, and within seconds of them hitting the newspaper, the board is doubling down, saying, "Oh no, Kotick's our guy." And I'm like, you guys might want to pump the brakes on that for 24 hours and kind of rethink it. And then it was the Kotick, hey, I'll leave if we can't turn this around within some, unspecified amount of time. And I'm like, yeah, it's a bad thing.
Well, and that's not even getting at the co-head of Blizzard leaving, because for multiple reasons, but as it comes out later, right, you get the less pay than the other co-head of Blizzard. You get the most recent kind of union busting letter that comes out after they start circulating about potentially organizing. Starts back in the summertime with the state of California filing a lawsuit, then followed up by federal regulatory agencies, which includes, allegations such as not only the ones you've listed, but also shredding of documents, right? I mean, it was one beat after another. And yes, there was a small window when things seemed to quiet down until they just, the more you dig at something like this, the more infected it is.
Yeah, and then the layoff of the QA testers, which just super bad optics. You're in hot water. That is not the time. Just float their salaries for another 6 months, right?
Well, they're in hot water PR wise. They
right.
Sure as heck are not in hot water revenue wise, right? That is the other piece of this all. Yes, if you go back to the Raven QA testers from just this last week, that they're not hurting for money. It's just not going to, there's a reason Bobby Kotick got the ginormous bonus that he got last year. Yeah.
Well, the devil's advocate, not against Activision Blizzard, but for this category, is sometimes you could focus on a specific game. And with Activision Blizzard, that was my only hesitation, is that obviously there were, as Game Logic said, bad eggs heavily involved. But it wasn't specific to a single title. So the one fleeting thought that I had was perhaps the Rockstar, the Grand Theft Auto trilogy, and simply because it's they just obviously didn't even attempt to make a competent master and just threw it out there for a cash grab. But
combined and preceded by them, removing the other versions from the store and basically forcing you into a corner where if you wanted to access those games, you had to buy the crappy one.
But,
as well as pulling them off the launcher after people had already paid for them.
I couldn't bring myself to argue against Activision Blizzard this year. So, all right. That's actually we're done with the negative categories. So we'll move on and to some different stuff. And we kind of flip. We go 180 degrees now. Company in hot water. Now let's look at a dev or publisher with the best attitude in the face of adversity. So I don't actually remember the first year we had this category, but I will. Oh wait, I already did the first one. Who hasn't gone first yet? Game Logic, you get to kick us off.
The company that I voted was for Microsoft and the Xbox division. This is a group of people who were arguably definitely on their heels at the end of Generation 8, having been outsold, yea verily, nearly 2-1 by the PlayStation console. They, kind of admittedly recognized that going into the tail end of the generation and just said, look, we're not going to continue fighting the battle of this generation. We're going to start lathering consumers up for the fight for next generation, and started making a lot of moves that made a lot of people happy. Backwards compatibility, buying lots of studios so that they started telegraphing early that they were going to have more first-party titles, and then starting to deliver on those first-party titles. And so, their adversity has come from this weird research, because I've been going back and listening to a lot of our old episodes, and I recently listened to, I think it was like our second episode, which was at the outset of last generation, and our conversation that first-party titles were no longer as important as they used to be. Because neither PlayStation nor Xbox had really come in very forcefully with first-party titles at the outset of that generation. But somehow, over the course of Generation 8, the dialogue and the discourse about the importance of first-party titles just started swelling to a bow wave of intensity, and suddenly, Microsoft was left in the lurch, having not, invested in that type of pipeline. So, they had to do something about it. They had to make a lot of different moves. They didn't feel like they were going to be in position to go toe-to-toe with Sony, I think, this generation, so they started doing different things. And, when you look at case studies of businesses, right, over the last, 30 years or so, that's the businesses that like this is similar to the story of larger corporations that survive, right? When IBM started being challenged, by cheapening personal computers, converting themselves over to an enterprise high performance computing and services company, right? Microsoft converting from a Windows company to an enterprise services company. BlackBerry, right, getting out of the hardware business and becoming, a business that is just about selling its enterprise security software. Even Seagate, right, some of the hard drive manufacturers who had to do the pivot to SSDs when they just religiously did not want to get rid of their spinning drive business. And so, obviously when Satya Nadella took over, there were lots of rumors of, his disinterest in the Xbox division and gaming, and being willing to even get rid of Xbox division. So this was a group of people that had to do something, right, to start tilting things in a different direction. And my sense of it, my speculation, is that we often talk about, like, the indicator of a good number two is, one, doing the things that your number one, that your boss is not good at, but also recognizing what your boss's priorities are, right, and converting your own philosophies to those. And I feel like Phil Spencer listened to what Satya was talking about and started pairing the strategic objectives of the Microsoft Corporation with how he would conduct business in the Xbox division. So that's who my vote goes to.
That was going to actually be my follow-up, is like just the whole push into the like the service-oriented structure, the service and subscription focus that Microsoft seems to be the leader in, between them, Nintendo and Sony. So my pick, I'll go next, and is for a Sony studio. So we went Microsoft, and I'll go Sony. And I actually chose Bend Studio from for Sony, and this is for Days Gone. I justified its appropriateness through that game, which was ported to PC, and mostly it was just because, like, they released Days Gone on PC, and there were people that they put time into it. I think the PC reviews, they weren't stellar, but it was obvious that they didn't just like throw it out there. They tried to optimize it for PC, and people enjoyed it. Despite a lot of like talk, when it came out, when Days Gone came out, it was like the Sony first party game that, like, nobody, it was just didn't get favorable reviews. Bend Studio was like the redheaded stepchild kind of studio of Sony's, like, major it wasn't God of War, it wasn't Horizon Zero Dawn, it wasn't Ghost of Tsushima. So to be seen as like the least capable, but then they still kept pushing the game and releasing on PC, and I mean, it made money. I'm pretty sure that there were reports that it still sold well. So, I just gave them a tip of the cap for sticking with it.
So 2 questions I had, maybe or maybe DBQ, did Ben do the port to PC?
That's what I'm looking up right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
see if
looked
that was
it up.
Nixus
I'm
as well.
I'm pretty sure that they were involved in it.
Okay, and I'm certain they
Yeah.
were. And it's not to take anything away. Let me walk that back a little. That was just to ask the question, so for my own knowledge, that was not to say, well, they farmed that out, so Ben had nothing to do with it. I mean, it's Ben's game, right? So
Yeah.
even if somebody else ported it, the credit goes to them for being the original creative minds behind it. My question I wanted to ask you, Swiss, was, do you think the success on PC was because the PC gaming culture and community kind of takes a different tact at games that console? That you have a big chunk of console players who are very, I don't know, I'll call them speed and action oriented, and the accusations about Days Gone was that it was a game that overstayed its welcome. And so in the PC gaming community, you have people who spend hours in war games and turn-based strategy. You think that the PC gaming was more patient and gave that game time to breathe? My secondary follow-on question is, do you think, based on the success on PC, that Bend will get a green light for Days Gone 2, or will be not relegated to being a support studio again and maybe be allowed to move on to a new siphon filter?
To your first question, I think that there's enough room in PC gaming for a game like this. I can understand like I don't want to, not to cast stereotypes, but your Call of Duty gamers that might have been like, oh, awesome, a zombie game where I ride around on a motorcycle, and then being completely like, oh, this isn't my cup of tea. But going to PC, I certainly think there are plenty of like CS:GO players or something that wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole. But there's also a lot of, I mean, I think this is where indie flourishes. That there's niches. There's plenty of eyeballs and mice and keyboards to go around. So, yeah, perhaps. As far as like 2, I'll just admit I was kind of like Prime or Tau on this one, and I struggled a little bit. So this might have been a stretch for me to pick. But as far as Days Gone 2, I will say that money talks louder than Metacritic. Let's put it that way. So if Sony was, I feel like Sony was, if they got 70s across the board on these Days Gone games, but they made a profit and they did, they were profitable. I don't see why Sony wouldn't greenlight a Days Gone 2 and maybe try to lean into use kind of the constructive criticism, so to speak.
Well, that's that. I don't know. My perspective is one that's unsure of that, whether or not, because I think Days Gone sold well. Like when you go back and look at the sales numbers, I think they didn't get a green light because it didn't review well. So I wonder if dollars mean more than Metacritic within the Sony empire. I don't know. DBQ, do you have any thoughts on those 2 questions?
I mean, first is thank you for referencing Siphon Filter. I appreciate that as a Ben Studio fan. Yeah, I mean, I think the other piece here is I thought we got a report in the springtime that Ben was relegated to what was rumored as the Last of Us remake or one of those,
I think what we got was, we definitely got some indicator, some soundbite that got dropped that indicated that they were back to being a support studio, backup studio. What they were not going to be, their next move was not to be allowed to go off and do their own IP again.
There's an article from Game Informer that says it was heavily implied that the first game didn't generate the profit Sony was seeking to merit a sequel.
Yeah, that's correct. Quality pick, by the way. That's I always
it's a nice one. Yeah,
I always love when you guys come in with like something that like either honors a dev who really. I was not attracted by what I heard about Days Gone, so I chose not to touch it either on console or PC. But my hat's off to them for having been a backup in a support studio for so long and finally getting a chance to do their own thing, and then and to do it. Whether however it turned out, they were true to their own vision of what they wanted to create. So that's to be applauded, I think.
I'm going to go back to your question, Game Logic, in terms of why it found a little more of an audience on PC. And I think Swiss is right. Like, there is more niche, there is more, it's a broader audience. But in some ways, Days Gone is more survival than it is third-person action, because there's a number of layers of systems and crafting and all different pieces. Yes, there's action, but there's a lot more crafting in that vein. And it doesn't suffer as much from being sandwiched between Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War, and having that comparison in a Sony platform.
I'll do one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'd agree then that there's much more of a customer base for that style of game on PC, where you have Ark and Elysium, just kind of all these like weird one-off, like early access, still not for pay kind of survival games that people play in droves for years, even though those games aren't necessarily well polished. But but there's a base that seems to be hungry for that on PC.
So this story actually kind of like both negates and proves your speculation. Back in June, PlayStation blog post, Sony Bend Studio, they're not working on Days Gone 2, but they are working on a brand new original IP. So they haven't been relegated to support necessarily, but they're not working on Days Gone 2. So I don't know what that means. But hey, we generated some conversation with that pick. So I will pat myself on the back. DBQ.
So we're bouncing from Microsoft to Sony back to Microsoft then. So my pick is 343 Industries. So thinking about where 343 was in this generation, in the Xbox One, PlayStation 4 generation, with the really busted up launch of Master Chief Collection and a dysfunctional matchmaking and all the multiple years that they spent with that. And while they were trying to fix that, they also came out with Halo 5, which didn't really find the type of audience that they were hoping for. Not only was narratively the story not well told and also kind of messy, but also the gameplay was not what fans were looking for. And yes, so 343 has improved with the work of the Master Chief Collection. And then just as they're starting to turn on that goodwill for the launch of this generation, they get delayed after kind of their coming out party, which was panned over graphical quality and fidelity when they first showed the action scenes after teasing trailers and a little bit of cinematics, and why they first show an action scene last year. Lot of panning in terms of the graphical quality, then announcements about that ray tracing wasn't going to be available at launch, and eventually they come out to say that the game is being delayed from the launch of the Xbox Series X and S, and now it puts it here. And not only did they have a successful few betas and really polished multiplayer, but then they dropped the multiplayer early on Halo's 20th birthday to a lot of goodwill. And while the story of Halo Infinite may not be getting complete praise, it is getting well praised, and even if they've taken some knocks on their progression system, the actual gameplay seems to be resoundingly positive from the multiplayer in Halo Infinite.
And I would even say, I mean, they're doing it down to the wire, because this is literally like within the last day or two. But they're delivering on changes to the progression system that should alleviate a lot of the pressure that they're getting, and they're delivering in that early, right? So, well played, by the way, because I would have done the exact same thing, which is like, doubled my estimated repair time estimate, right? And then deliver those changes way earlier than were anticipated. So good on them.
Tao didn't really have a pick for this one. He turned in an incomplete, so
Yeah, sorry. There's one other category too coming up soon, and then after that, we're all good.
all right. So we'll move on to the next category, best storycraft. DB, I saw this game, and I checked it out after I saw your list, and then I put it in my Steam wish list. So, what is your pick for best storycraft of 2021?
So my pick for best storycraft is Wildermyth. So Wildermyth PC game came out this spring. Well, technically it was in early access last year. It's been in early access for a while. That's where I heard about it last year on Axe of the Blood God, former US Gamer podcast. Now they're independent, but they focus on RPGs. They were looking forward to this game, so it got on my radar and on my list, my tracking list back in 2020. And so as it came out with a little bit of launch week discounts, it was great to pick up. And while I'm not a big tabletop Dungeon Dragon RPG type of player, this seems to capture the mythos around it in terms of storytelling. But the piece that I love in terms of narratives within games is when your choices matter, when there are lasting repercussions and ramifications, and those, like a good novel or like a good serialized novel or comic book, that those tendrils kind of continue on throughout the story. And so there's a lot of character interaction here. There are, it is like a good tabletop game. It is not just a one-time playthrough that you choose a little bit different. You focus more on some other characters. You can build a party differently. And the dialogue, the kind of cutout art style of it is just charming, but it really is the story that kind of propels me through it, and why this was an easy pick for me for best storycraft.
Right, like you can have descendants of your line, right, and the story can keep going, right?
Yes, not in the not in like a roguelike where you're not like a rogue legacy type of descendant, but yes, you are moving through, you have that ability, not to the same degree of what's that game on Epic where it's civilization, like where you actually do have descendants going through, but there is this lineage, there are relationships, there are marriages and children. Yeah, it's all there in the trappings of a good RPG. And while I did dabble in visual novels later in the year, that is, I like when a game gives me still something to interact with rather than just clicking through dialogue. So
yeah, that's another choice pick. That game still is on my lookout list, and every time I'm thinking I'm going to go grab it, I go, I'll just wait. I'm going to play something else. But
yesterday it got announced for Switch. So
nice.
And it'll be a good fit for the portability of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It would be very interesting to have that and Dungeon Encounters on the Switch. Be a good flyaway kit.
DB, I'm sorry. When did you say this came out officially?
Officially, I believe it launched this spring.
Yeah, I thought it was a late spring or early summer release, something like that.
All right, maybe I missed.
Are you checking my Steam has it as
about
June.
It like at some point during the year. I just don't remember ever hearing about this one. Maybe I was off that week.
Yeah,
it was a small game. I mean, Steam has it as June 15th. Yep. So
yeah,
by World Walker Studios.
It trended on the Metacritic list for a month or two, maybe 3.
Who
right.
looks at those?
Tao.
Yes.
Now that Tao is a PC gamer,
that's right.
He's choosing PC games for the Superlative Awards.
Rather than my only PC game actually on this one, I believe, from all these categories.
VR games.
Well, the VR games too, yeah. But some of those I played on just a standalone quest before I got the PC, so don't cut those. Anyways, so storycraft. So I picked Age of Empires 4, and obviously there's not like kind of like a running storyline. Like, they pick some fictional person, but they actually go, when I'm going through the campaign, at least so far that I've played, it just kind of picks historical battles, and you kind of like puts you into them. So I thought that was kind of cool. Kind of, it gives you like a nice little narration before each battle, just saying what's going on, what happens. And I thought it was kind of nice. I mean, okay, it's educational, sure, but I mean, I thought that was kind of interesting. I kind of liked the little story that you get beforehand, and it doesn't do anything like, it's not like, high res 3D models or anything. It just kind of shows pictures and kind of maybe like kind of goofy. I don't want to say like old time. Was it like Flash or anything like that? But it almost kind of reminds me of that sometimes, like when they're showing some of these animations they put out there. But I mean, it's just kind of cool. I kind of like the history stuff. So I mean, I'm down for that. So I picked Age of Empires 4.
And this is a game by Relic, by the way. So these are the Company of Heroes guys and the original Homeworld guys.
Ensemble Studios is defunct now, right?
They are, yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so I listened to your guys' GX show that I wasn't on when this game came up, and I wasn't sure if we knew that this had tracked over to a different developer. So I'm a fan. I mean, I would be right there with. I'm a fan of Company of Heroes and Company of Heroes 2, and obviously of Homeworld, and the storytelling that Relic does. I've seen some shade thrown at Relic just because of how their progression systems are, which I think is. I don't necessarily agree that that's warranted, but I do. I have always loved they're one of my favorite studios of all time, and I've loved their storytelling in RTSs.
You go ahead.
I was just say, yeah, like I think like I said, I mentioned when I was talking about this game, like I think I played like a demo or maybe like one of the early ones, but in the earlier games, if any of you guys had played them, do you remember like how they did the story? Was there a story like its own like little story, or was it kind of the same thing where it's just like historical stuff that you had to go through the campaign? I don't know if anybody else ever played it.
I mean, I remember Age of Empires 2 literally had a Joan of Arc campaign, just like 4 does.
Oh, okay.
And I guess they had. I know that they had like a series of battles where you were kind of organized on the field in a certain way, and you had to do the objectives. Yeah. And I do think that there was interspersed some sort of like almost like a storybook, but I can't remember quite the details. It sounds like they definitely were inspired by 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and in the older AOE games, I mean, as you guys mentioned on that GS episode, I tend not to play campaigns in RTSs because they get frustrating with kind of their gamey like constraints that they put on you. But I did play Homeworld and Homeworld 2 and Company of Heroes and Company of Heroes 2, and I don't, if I recollect correctly, definitely for Homeworld, what Relic did was they kind of had like slowly floating like art, pictures and stuff that would float across, and then they would have it narrated in the background, and they would have, it was kind of like a big picture book, like they would transition into another photo or whatever that would kind of instill photographs, like represent the narration that was going on. But as far as I remember, I mean, if they would have changed it, it would have been in Company of Heroes or Company of Heroes 2. But I think that it was the same thing, and there was some. There were not like voice actor. There was not mocap and stuff like that, like you would have in FMV. So.
Yeah, that's how this one is too. Yeah, it's just like a narrator, like talking about what's going on.
Yeah.
All right, Logic. You this one, I'd forgotten that you had played this one, or did you?
Yeah, I played it a little bit. I didn't finish it, but enough to kind of get a sense for my enjoyment of it. So my pick for best storycraft was Guardians of the Galaxy. It's interesting because I think if you go back through the history of this show, I think there was one year that we had 2 categories, and we struggled to like define what the differences were. I think we had best story at one point, and then I think we had best narrative at another point. And I guess this year or last year we just went to best story craft and just kind of merged the 2 and stopped worrying about the differences. So I don't know that Guardians of the Galaxy has the best script, but but the voice acting and the dynamics in between the characters is pretty amazing. And the only thing that's really come close to it this year, in my opinion, is Deathloop, which was a, well, I guess in some ways it's a lot of the same thing, right? Where there are people who are working ostensibly together, but what makes the characterization of them so great is their constant contention between them. And the same is often true of Guardians of the Galaxy. It very much has that same kind of humor as the movies. It's kind of the same, although the characterizations aren't exactly the same. The dynamic of the group is relatively the same, and so it's very neat that they kept and maintained that, and just cast it in a different light. I think at the end of the day, Guardians of the Galaxy does all the things that Avengers should have done, right? And this is a Square Enix game, so good. I mean, they could have easily been, my pick for dev or publisher with the best attitude in the face of adversity, right? Because as much as I liked the trailer that I saw at whatever, I can't remember, was it? Did we see this at E3?
It was at well, not E3, but it was whatever. It was Xbox's showcase,
Okay.
Microsoft showcase this year. Yep.
Yeah.
So they had the extended trailer. Never really landed too well. A lot of complaints about what the combat looked like. Yep.
Yeah. I had my fingers crossed behind my back that this was going to turn out okay, but I just really, honestly, didn't have a huge ton of faith that this was going to be the turnaround from Avengers. But it is absolutely that. This, to me, like, quite frankly, like, I don't know. I would be fine if they just shut Avengers down so that they would stop talking about it. Like,
But wait,
okay,
the
sorry.
story in Avengers is
Yeah,
Crystal Dynamics
Yeah.
did a good job with the single player story. It's that they were either, whatever, whether it was within the studio or within Square Enix itself, that moved in the direction of trying to make it a service-based game. That's where it falls apart.
yeah.
But give me that story, and that's a great story. This game almost beat out Wildermyth for me. Is when I was winnowing down my list, it was between Guardians and Wildermyth.
And that's right. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, there's two key problems that I have with Avengers that makes Guardians of the Galaxy stand out against it as a backdrop, which is that it has a severe messaging and marketing problem, and they still haven't contended with that, and it's just, to me, at the time that game came out, right on the tail end of Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, and I don't understand, quite honestly, myself, even how it landed so differently. I just remember seeing all the trailers and stuff and being really weirded out that the character models looked almost like the movie, but not quite like the movie. And I'm like, why didn't you pick to do one or the other? But I don't have that problem with Guardians. But my statement about Avengers is, it's not that Avengers is a bad game. It's that Avengers is a PR problem, and I feel like, I said this to my wife one time when we were shopping for a house. It's like, I don't want the one golden egg in amongst a bunch of turds, right? And this is the Guardians of the Galaxy. I feel like stands out as a golden goose egg until somebody mentions Avengers, right? So, but at any rate, that was my pick for best storycraft.
I cheated a little bit on my pick. I haven't actually played this game, but it's one that I want to play, so I put it on there. Because my real pick isn't technically from 2020, so I didn't do it. But I picked Alan Wake Remastered because it's a Remedy title, and the concept just seemed interesting to me, and I know it has a really huge cult following, and just my enjoyment of Control gave me the benefit of the doubt. So I wish I had more direct ability to speak to it, but I figured I wanted to kind of throw this release out there, because part of what I like about the Superlative show in general is just being able to look back on, we're not myopically focused on the fall releases. We can look back and see in totality what we had for the year in gaming. So Alan Wake Remastered. It's annoying me because I think it's an Epic Store exclusive for PC, but it's one that's really on my radar, and I really enjoy Remedy and the way they do things. So, all right, here's another one that an interesting category that you probably won't get in too many places, and we did best comic relief character in a game, and let's see. This is the other one that Tao turned in an incomplete assignment for. So,
Just the I just want to say I didn't play anything that had any comic relief in it. That was the only problem. I almost said Immortal Phoenix Rising, even though that came out the year before. But I remember I used that. And we used that last year for the Superlatives, so I didn't want to double up. So that's my reasoning.
Just a question, Todd. Did you, being a Game Pass subscriber, have you not played Psychonauts 2?
No, I haven't played that yet.
Okay.
No.
Because I was just asking because that had some comical moments in it and comical characters.
Yeah.
all right. So this is, other than the the Activision Blizzard, this is the first time that we've actually had a category with a duplicate, and that would be DB and Logic. So,
Yeah, I could see that, given the conversation we just had.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'll let DB go.
Very much so. Yeah, so mine, while Wildermyth won for Storycraft, I wanted a place for Guardians of the Galaxy, and this is where it is because it's comic relief. I mean, it is a good story, but I also not only found myself smiling, but laughing out loud in a room by myself playing this game, and the dialogue between the characters. So it is not just one character; it is the ensemble of the group, and the banter between them, not only in mission but as you're moving around the ship. It's good writing. I mean, plain and simple, it's good writing, and it plays into a lot of the comedy beats that were hit within the James Gunn movies, but does so in a way that makes them feel their own characters. So definitely well worth it. I want to hear where Game Logic lands on this one as well.
No, I want to say this maybe should be counted as a double. So DBQ, let me make sure I understand. So your pick for best comic relief character was for the entire cast of Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yes, it's the ensemble.
Okay, that is a double then, because that's exactly the same thing I said. I felt because that dynamic of humor, like if there was just one, if it was just a Star-Lord game, or if even if it was just a Star-Lord and Drax or Star-Lord, like it wouldn't be the same. Like it's all five of them, the voice actors behind them, and their characterizations that really turn it into something really special, right, from a comedic perspective, an action comedy perspective, like that. Like I feel like we're gonna look back like in a year and just realize like how uniquely special that ensemble really is.
We don't get that very often in a game, right? I mean, there's lots of movies that are that way, but we don't get that. We don't get that type of writing in a game because it's usually trying to propel the action forward.
Well, we don't normally get this type of story framework, right? Where it's the multiple characters. You don't get team-based games like this that are in a single player, right, action adventure type of game, right? It's either something like Avengers, where they're just really made to be a co-op, PvE kind of experience. And there's probably, I mean, you would know better than I do. There's probably not as much narrative or script writing behind the characterizations. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, because there's just a ton. Like,
I mean, there's some, but it's usually it's smaller interactions. It
Right.
is not to this type of kind of constant where there's so much dialogue and unique stuff going on.
Yeah.
That it isn't just here's a cutscene between the next mission, but you can spend a lot of time just living in the ship and living with these characters.
Yeah, you can get down onto a planet and like not play the game for like 10 minutes, and they will be constantly yammering at each other. Right, like I can't imagine the amount of dialogue that was recorded for this game, and it's not all linear. Like it's not. I don't know how they did it. It's some weird mix of like linearity and triggered And I don't know how they pulled it off, because there's just an incredible volume of dialogue and narrative between, or dialogue between the characters. Yeah, it's something pretty special, I think, from a, not only from a storycraft perspective, like I said before, but also from a, in the, a script writing, characterization, ensemble cast performance perspective.
I'm
Do we do we know who like the writer or writers were, or like were they comic book writers, or just people from the developer?
I
I
don't
was
know.
trying to look right now, but I couldn't really
Yeah.
find anything. So
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't.
I don't know if you guys had looked it up.
I don't remember seeing coming across my windshield like a news story of like a prominent, well-known,
Yeah, I
writer.
would have. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the part I don't remember either. Is that they weren't out there touting that this was written by X and Y. Who?
yeah, I would have figured they'd
other
plaster it on
boys-
the box or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
or at least in articles. All right, I was just wondering.
It's actually making me excited to pick it up. Like, and I don't really do comic book. Well, I mean, I'm not really a big comic book guy, but I will say that my family really enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy, the movies. So this might be, and like you said, this is kind of an exception to, the style of gameplay kind of is more in my wheelhouse. So.
Yeah, this is definitely not. I wouldn't call this a heavy comic booky kind of game. The Guardians of the Galaxy property has almost always been that way. Like, it's been something that's kind of apart from the Marvel universe, and unless they are deliberately like jammed like a Reese's peanut butter cup like in with like the X-Men or something else. But a standard GOG story can go on for issues and issues and issues without ever really having anything to do with anything Earthbound in the Marvel universe.
Well, I did also kind of choose an ensemble cast, but mine was for WarioWare Get It Together. And this could have been another one of my surprise picks, because like multiple members of my family like enthusiastically played the game. But just from I couldn't choose like one from Wario. All the characters have like their little quirks, and the dialogue in between the missions is kind of as good between them. So it was fun. I was, if I had to pick one, it's really hard. I just like the weirdness that they have. Like there's kindergartners that are hyperactive, so the character is constantly jumping up and down. You can't like that. That's how you control it. And like the mom, like is always depicted as like a ghost that freaks out, and she's always. It's just it's pretty cute and well done, and I'm disappointed I've missed out on a lot of WarioWare titles after playing this one. So game night will be our next topic. Most likely for a family game night. And I guess I'll just go ahead and stay on and leave it with WarioWare Get It Together, because in the Swissguard household, we had WarioWare Get It Together as our family game nights. So that's my pick. Just it's rapid. It's you can get everybody together and play for 15 minutes and get something out of it, and it's silly, so the kids enjoy it. So we had a lot of fun. Let's go with Logic. What did you pick? Yours was an interesting pick, I must say.
Yeah, I didn't play a ton of kind of family-oriented games this year. Again, when I'm up in that spectrum, that's Call of Duty, Black Ops, Cold War. That's not something that and things of that ilk. I wound up not associating a lot of things that I would play with my family. But so I went, but I did dabble in the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles on PlayStation 5 this year, and so that was the closest thing that I would pick for a family game night. And I could see, the appeal in that to kids, like kind of solving the mystery and like working those kind of mental muscles that for them they would kind of be going through the first time, because they haven't watched a lot of procedural legal dramas. So that was the closest thing that I would think that they would be interested in. And I could see them having fun with that, playing through that kind of in a family setting or kind of as a team, and making choices together.
Tao, your pick, like a lot of times the family game night picks like just aesthetically end up skewing kind of a little bit more childish or cartoony, but yours was not.
No, mine's a little different. I'm actually going to add another game too here in a second, because we didn't play anything that I played this or that came out this year together. It was kind of like we played some MCC, the Master Chief Collection. We played that as usual as a family, but that was obviously from years ago. I think we played a little bit of Minecraft Dungeons at one point. But so I'm going to kind of split it between my wife and my son. So with my son, we've been playing Forza Horizon 5 together, or trying to, at least at the beginning, because that was a little rough at the beginning there. But now, they've kind of, worked out the bugs on that on the online part. So we've been playing a lot of that. And even when we're not actually playing together, like we'll play at the same time and just kind of like, oh, hey, did you get this car? Oh, I see you, doing a wheel spin. What did you get? That kind of thing too. So it's kind of cool that we have that dynamic while playing that game. And then with my wife, when the SNES games have been coming out, I played the SNES Dr. Mario version because we played the NES version back in the day. So we kind of stepped it up a generation and are playing the newer one for now. So she just like thrashes me in that game. I don't know how like what's going on with that game with me, but I can't. It's most of the time she's just like beating me. So, but yeah, those are the two games. So, Forza Horizon 5 and Dr. Mario from the SNES.
DB's pick definitely feels like a family game night. Fits in there. I can remember if you played this. I don't remember the episode where you talked about this one.
I played it a little bit, but it was also, I played it a lot, but I mentioned it a little bit on one of the episodes, but then I was out of rotation for a while on the GX shows. So it's a family. Well, I'm going to back up and say the first half of the year family game night was actually my family game night from last year, which was Unspottable because it officially released in January. But the second half of the year has been all about Nick All-Star Brawl. So the Nickelodeon one by the makers of Slab City. As a game mill game, it should have been just as crappy of a cash-in as the Nerf or the G.I. Joe game from last year. But because it had a tiny budget, but they had good developers. They had developers who were well respected within the kind of platform fighting community with Slab City and basically let them do their thing. And they made an incredibly competent budget platform character brawler. And now there's, kind of rumors out there and some kind of Twitter acknowledgments that they're adding voice acting in. The developers have been out there from the beginning saying this was made on a really small budget, and if it sells well, we'll continue to add stuff to it. And they have. They announced Garfield as their character that came out this week on a Monday of all things. On a Tuesday for Garfield, I think. But it's just goofy fun. And it got knocks in its reviews for things that I don't care about in a fighter. Like, it got knocks for not any real strong licensed music or character voice acting. Like, as a player and as a family, we weren't playing it to hear a quip from SpongeBob. We were playing it for the goofiness of SpongeBob fighting with CatDog, or for the fact that both my sons are big Smash Brothers fans, and so it started becoming kind of comparisons of move sets and edge guarding and wave dashing and all kinds of different pieces that really just give it legs at a time when Smash has released its last character. And so now here is a new game that kind of captures that and gives us something goofy to jump into, laugh about, get a little competitive about, and also something where I'm perfectly fine when my kids beat me continuously in. So that's my family game night, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl.
Next up, this is kind of more of a deep dive type question category. Most likely to be mentioned in other media as pop culture. So, Dick, why don't you start us off with this one?
Who did you say? Sorry.
I said Logic.
Oh, okay. So,
You're on the
Oh,
mic.
you kind of like
Oh, sorry.
glitched there for a second. So.
So we've mentioned a couple at a couple points tonight some of the history behind some of these categories as we are in our 5th iteration of doing this. This one we brought into being the year that Fortnite kind of apogeed when normals became consciously aware of specific titles in the gaming industry. And so the one that I selected for this year was Halo Infinite. Because I've heard and seen that there are normals who are not like in the gaming zeitgeist and gaming community proper who are still steadily aware that like a new Halo game is out this year. They don't necessarily know all the details behind it and all of the lore, but they've seen, I mean, this is the tail of the tape on this is equally as much a part of the Microsoft marketing campaign, which is not nearly as out of control as it was for Halo 2 and Halo 3, but still, we have warthogs like in town squares in Great Britain, and we have, augmented reality pelicans and Master Chiefs showing up at NCAA Division I football games and things like that. So I think the world knows that there's a new Master Chief, and this year you also get, if you're not in the gaming community, if you are just a big TV watcher, you also have the Halo series coming at some point in the next, I don't know, however many months. I don't know if it's 2021 specifically, but,
It's supposed to be the spring of 22, yeah.
Okay. But, trailer is out there, and I'm sure people have consumed it on YouTube. So, yet another way for people who are not necessarily gamers to be conscious and aware of this pop culture icon.
All right. I agree with everything Game Logic said, and Halo Infinite was also my choice. So, but DB and Tao had different choices. So let's go with I think I'm trying to like jumble it up here. DB's turn.
Okay, so I'll stay with a Microsoft exclusive then and go Forza Horizon 5. That as a racing game, it stretches across genres. It's advertised. You're going to get that in your ESPN and Fox Sports. It is also the first big racing title for the new generation of consoles, which historically are a showpiece for graphical fidelity. And Game Pass makes it all the more accessible for people to try out. And so, yeah, I mean, we've talked about Forza Horizon on the show before. I don't need to talk about how great the game is, but I just think that over time it has enough legs, and because of the racing aspects of it, it's crossing over in genres, and I feel like it's a little more of a stretch than Halo because it isn't that kind of zeitgeist aspect of a game, but it is one that when it gets out in front of people or when they see commercials, it attracts maybe non-traditional gamers in that way as well.
Now, you bring up a good point, and one that I haven't thought of. We've all mentioned in some various format before, but I didn't think about specifically for the show, which is that you're absolutely right. Like, this is the kind of thing that like a kid comes to a parent and says, "Hey, you don't need to buy me video games, individual titles. I just want you to subscribe, right, for me to Game Pass." Right, and maybe may come at them specifically saying, "Hey, now's the time I want us to sign up on Game Pass. I'm asking permission, right, or asking you to sign me up for Game Pass because there's a new Halo game that's out, right?" And the negotiating tactic is, "I don't want you to spend $60 on Halo. I just want you to spend $10 a month or whatever to get me on Game Pass." And they could very well be coming, with Forza Horizon 5 being part of that flag waving as well.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, I guess racing could be considered like a sport game, right? We had 2 sports games for pop culture.
Yeah, so very similar reasons that DB brought up, but I pick MLB The Show So non-exclusive, but a very new game to the Xbox ecosystem, because that's obviously been a PlayStation exclusive for the longest time. And yeah, like I just said, I mean, you're going to see that on, every sports channel is going to be talking about it, just because, it's in front of the baseball games, after the baseball game, during the baseball game. So, but yeah, very similar reasons. And I was actually going to pick Forza, but I didn't want to triple up my categories here, so I left Forza for another category here coming up. So yeah, I picked the MLB The Show. Still playing that. I still pick that up too every, at least once or twice a week. Just do the dailies and kind of going through my season and stuff like that. So it's fun. I really like it. It's kind of one of those too that someone might see it on TV and I'm like, why are you watching baseball right now? But like, no, I'm playing a baseball. It's a baseball game. I'm not actually watching a live game. So you get that kind of comments too every once in a while. Just like kind of a lot of the sports game nowadays too.
Yeah, and I agree with this. I've got a family member who's getting a PS5 for their family for Christmas and asking for games for their partner. And he's a big baseball fan, but not a big gamer. And the only game I can really strongly recommend is he'll spend a year playing MLB The Show and franchising and everything else. Yep.
Another good game for little Jimmy, as Game Logic was talking about, to get the Game Pass subscription. So it's a sports game. If you go to your dad, say, hey, let's get Forza and MLB The Show, you're probably gonna get that subscription. So it's a good choices.
All right. On the we'll continue with kind of our view of the zeitgeist and look at what game from 2021 do you think is most likely to receive Game of the Year in most media outlets? And it's always kind of, when we have the Superlative show, it's always seems to be like a few days to a week after the video game awards do their thing. So like there's always one game that's kind of floating out there. The VGAs just had It Takes Two win Game of the Year. But I think, Logic already talked about how he picks it early. And there's a lot of other media outlets yet to come. So, we kind of still leave it open, so to speak. And in fact, this year, I'll do a mini spoiler. None of us chose It Takes Two as most likely to be Game of the Year, despite the recent selection. So I think we'll start with Tao this time.
All right. So once again, I'm trying to pick games, and it's probably a long shot, but I'm trying to pick games that I actually played. So I picked Forza Horizon 5 again. I know. It's a great game. Everybody's liked it. All the websites and all that have praised it and everything like that. But it's a racing game. It's the fifth in the series. I don't know if they're gonna actually give it a Game of the Year, but I would like to see it. It's kind of, to me at least, it's kind of an underdog pick, just because and I think even Game Logic has talked about this too in the past, and I think it might have actually even came up in some lists and stuff like that. And it's just kind of there, maybe just because there wasn't so much coming out this year. More than likely, at the very least, it might give like an Xbox Game of the Year at the very least, maybe not like the whole category. We'll see, but we'll see. I hope it wins something out there other than just like race, best racing game. So that's probably going to do that.
Yeah, I think it's actually in. So IGN has up their list of nominees that they're considering for Game of the Year, and Forza Horizon 5 is actually in the list of nominees, which I found very surprising.
Nice.
I don't agree with that, by the way, but I find it very I love Forza Horizon 5, and like I said before, I am very likely to put way more time into it, like I did for Forza Horizon 4. But I just have my thoughts of like where it sits on the gaming landscape across everything else. That's
given that statement. What did you select?
I wound up selecting Halo Infinite. The interesting dynamic is, of course, the VGAs has a calendar cutoff, which Halo Infinite did not make. And so it is in that bucket, like Cyberpunk 2077 was, and I mean, quite frankly, Hitman 3 kind of was too, even though it came out the following year. Definitely in the same bucket that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order was, where they're games that come out after that cutoff, and then because the VGAs, in my opinion, is so actually all of the Game Award shows, I would contend except for ours, is so heavily tilted with a recency bias, just as you mentioned, Swiss, like people tend to think first of the titles that they've played kind of in the fall and forget those ones that came out, almost a year beforehand. But so I didn't have to play by those rules for my pick, so I went with Halo Infinite, because most of the other media outlets will be picking their GOTY, after the VGAs, late in December, early at the start of next year. So given the high regards that it seems to be, that the single player campaign seems to be garnering, and the fact that I would contend that what it seems like I see is that people are incredibly happy with the mechanics of the Halo multiplayer. They're just grousing about the progression system. So I feel like this one has done the twofer with a good multiplayer and good single player campaign, and so has a pretty good chance to be the designated GOTY.
Maybe you're kind of your game is not like, I would say, flagship.
No, it is not a big AAA game, but I have already seen it on some lists. Maybe not in the top, but I definitely think that it will end up in the discussion, and that is Inscription. So the deck builder indie game, I've played a little bit of it. I've enjoyed what I've played so far, and the tone of it, I really enjoyed the developer's last game, which was Pony Island, which starts off as exactly what you think is a little side-scrolling horse jumping over things on an island, and becomes incredibly meta, and there's a demon that's infected not only the island but the game, and it goes in all kinds of different directions. And from the lack of for the gating that podcasts have had around spoilers around this game, it's my assumption that there are similar twists and turns that this developer does with this game as well. So this is where I think it hits in the media outlets kind of indie darling aspect.
For my pick, I went with Resident Evil Village. This actually, and this one again, as Game Logic alluded to, the recency bias. I always like to kind of look back. When I start to compile my list, I get just a release schedule throughout the year, and I do recall. I'm not a horror gamer. Like, I don't really play Resident Evil, but I do recall quite a bit of buzz about this title. I believe it is the best-selling Resident Evil game or something. It sold a lot, and I know there was one character in particular that kind of captured everybody's attention in the village, and was generating a lot of buzz online. So, I'll be honest, I was a little concerned when I made this pick that it wouldn't be as universal a title. Like, not everybody plays Resident Evil games. I mean, a lot of people do, but not everybody. So that would be my one hesitation. But I also thought a game like Halo Infinite, I think, would be too late to I feel like that will work against it. The fact that it was really hit in December. So that would have been kind of my next choice once the reviews started rolling in. All right, coming down to the home stretch. This one is always one of my favorite awards, and it's the hidden gem or most overlooked game. Because I think it allows us to kind of give praise to a game. A lot of it's ones that we've played, but that hasn't gotten a lot of publicity. And it's the ones that we have as we've gone through the year, special games that we've had this year. It's always nice to be able to talk about them with friends. So, Hidden Gem, Most overlooked. DB, why don't you start us off with your pick?
All right. So mine is a game that I discovered this summer during like the demos on Steam, and it released this fall. It is Demon Turf. So Demon Turf is a indie platformer by a small team. Fabraz is the name of the studio. It's maybe mainly 3 guys with some additional help. They got picked up by Platonic Games, the former Rare, the ukulele guys, and it's the first game that under their Platonic game publishing brand that they're doing as well. So it's a 3D platformer. While I said that I had the most fun in Smurfs as a 3D platformer, I appreciate the most what this game does as a 3D platformer, both in its art style, which is kind of a flat cell shaded aspects, and does some really kind of cool things with that design because you're a flat character in a 3D world, and so there is some frame animation that happens as you try to turn the camera to see if the character is actually flat. But it does some really interesting things with the 3D platforming genre, where it gives you multiple flags as checkpoints that you can put down at any location, but you have a limited number of them. And so rather than giving you specific, because in some ways it plays out similar to an early 2000s, late 90s collectathon. I mean, there's not that much to collect, but it is in that type of vein. And so being able to plop a checkpoint down by someplace that you've been struggling with, or before a difficult enemy encounter, or lots of platforming challenges. There's some battles, but you only have kind of indirect attacks with pushing. So you're pushing things into obstacles or into spikes. You have multiple forms, so you can do a double jump and a glide as you turn into a bat because you're a demon, or you have a little bit of a swim as you're some type of, demon eel, let's say. But one of the things that I also really liked about it was when they released it early in Steam, they were doing kind of time trial level challenges that really allowed them to do play testing on a whole bunch of different levels or little platforming challenges, which eventually made their way into the game. Maybe with a little bit of a different skin or a graphical texture, but those settings turned in as side quests into the game and helped it populate it while engaging the community. So Demon Turf, it is out on all platforms. I have played the demo on PC, and right now on the Epic Store, it is on sale. So on their winter sale. So yeah, Demon Turf.
Tao, why don't you share your hidden gem?
Yeah, so this one was, I bent the rules a little bit here. So this one actually was released in kind of late 2020 for the Switch, and it actually came out for PC and PlayStation 4 and Xbox also eventually. I think a couple months later. But it's Raji, an Ancient Epic. So kind of adventure type game, action adventure type game. Excuse me. Kind of deals with kind of Indian mythology, which the year before, actually that same year in 2020, I actually picked up Immortals, and that was Greek and Roman mythology. So I always like that. I don't want to say history because obviously we don't know. It's kind of stories of ancient times. But I picked this one up this year. I kind of went back. I think it was one of the indie worlds, like right at the beginning of the year, that had came out, and I was like, I'm going to go back to one from 2020, and take a look back at what was shown there, and this was one of them. So I was like, I'm going to try it out. So kind of like God of War type-ish combat. You got a sword, you got magic you can do, and there's these big enemies that you can kind of like jump off of, and the environment you can kind of spin around like columns or kind of jump off those too. So I've had a lot of fun with this game. I go back to it I haven't beat it yet. I go back to it every once in a while and do a few levels and then kind of take a break and then kind of come back to it. But nothing like super hard or super I think there's a little bit of puzzles too here and there, but nothing super hard. So you just kind of move blocks around or something like that on the board. But I do have a lot of fun with it. Like I said, just the mythology of stuff. I always kind of veer into that kind of gameplay and just TV and everything like that. So I was kind of just drawn to this one. So that's my pick.
That's a great pick, Tao. I love this game. I picked it up last year during the Winter Epic Sale with my $10 coupon because I had been tracking it from the year before. It is everything you said. It's a lot of fun, beautiful art style, and because it's set, and maybe it's just my Western naivete, but because it's set in kind of Indian mythology, it's really engaging because it's things I didn't know. The other piece here, they have announced they're working on kind of an ultimate edition to bring it over to current gen consoles. But
nice.
Just a shout out to the devs. It's been delayed because the main developer, writer, designer came down with COVID. Multiple people on the dev team have as well. Everybody is recovering. But yeah, I've been following along with this dev team for the year. So good pull.
Yeah, Nodding Head Games is the developer.
All right, I think I'll go next. This one, I kind of picked. It's overlooked because it's restricted to Japan, and and there aren't too many baseball simulation games. So I went with eBaseball Pro Yaku Spirits 2021 Grand Slam. This was my experiment into imports this year because I wanted a simulation baseball game, and the Switch doesn't really have them. And then this one was about to come out like 2 weeks after I was starting to explore, so I picked it up. Had a lot of fun. I liked the mechanics. I had a lot of fun with it. But a few of these Pro Yaku Spirits games have been released in the West. So I think Pro Yaku Spirits 2019 was actually released on the PS4. I don't know if that one was also an import. There's been a handful that have come, but they're few and far between. So Konami has a really good baseball franchise, and it's just not as well known in the West because it's the Japanese major league. So that's my pick for most overlooked game. It sells well in Japan, but overall it's pretty overlooked.
And you had mentioned before. Sorry, you had mentioned before this is it's a pretty decent baseball, not just kind of goofy big headed characters and stuff like that, right? It's a pretty good it's all around baseball.
Yeah, it's a sim. So
yeah.
That was my pick for this year.
Nice.
And then Game Logic doubling up with his pick for most overlooked game.
Yeah, so this is Death Stranding Director's Cut coming in again. Just kind of for the same reasons that I counted it for the biggest surprise, superlative. And those two categories are different. First of all, biggest surprise is allowed to cover either game or a thing within a game, right? If something happens that was just a total twist for you that you didn't see coming. But this hidden gem also, is one where you could already have been convinced of its quality, but you could be still taken off guard with how it hits you. And one of my things, for Death Stranding Director's Cut, I was just very surprised at how I became emotionally invested in and built a relationship with the game that was different, that transcended just the fact that I saw bits of my favorite games in there, like Far Cry and Diablo and other things. What surprised me, particularly at a time where I have struggled with what role or not social media will play in my life, and kind of interacting with other gamers, I fell in love with the solitude. And when I was younger, when I have done backpacking in the past, my shtick about backpacking at a time when I was younger and more foolish was I would just take off by myself. I didn't go with a part. I just went and bought gear and read books and figured out how to backpack and how to camp. And I just told a good friend of mine when I was going in past the tree line and told him when I should be out. Right, and I left my cell phone in my car. because this was back in the day where cell phone batteries did not last for multiple days at a time, so there was no point in me taking the cell phone. And so that nostalgia, that solitude that you feel in Death Stranding when you are, as some other gamers think of it, like just walking, which is not how I thought of it. But there's a piece of it that's similar to that, and it's that loneliness of just being out in the landscape on your own, and navigating and orienteering and like figuring stuff out without any kind of a support system or reach back, or nobody's coming to rescue you, right? It's just I found myself very enamored by that hook, and so for that reason, it is my hidden gem. But I also feel like it's overlooked because, again, the dialogue on Twitter and social media has been about that this game doesn't have elements that I readily found in the game, and admittedly, I say that's because Kojima never told you that those things were in there, right? And so, from a certain opinion, you could have the perspective that, well, you just have to actually play a game to figure out what's in it. But we're living in a world where there's 240 games that arguably you should have played this year, and are you going to pick Death Stranding Director's Cut as one of your subset of games that you're going to get to?
It's a good segue. Game logic. One of the games you're going to get to. So our next category is most likely to regret trading or not playing in 2021. You just didn't get to it. And that's actually my reasoning was it was one that I desperately wanted to play, and it just never got all the way up in my queue. But it is a game I have played in the past, which is why I was so eager to get back to it and return to that world for all the reasons Game Logic just stated, and it is Death Stranding. I kind of am scared to look at my last save on it, but it always feels like the game was like, oh yeah, I'm going to jump back into that next weekend, or when I have a 3-day weekend coming up or something. I want to play that. But like you said, it's the solitude, is being out there. I need to have time to just like lose myself in the game. And so it always ends up being something where it's like, well, I'll just play this instead. I can do a couple of missions here or whatever. Yeah, that's been it's been like the thorn in my side game that I like loved and haven't come back to. So it's and I know that the save files from 2020. So that's what I regret not playing in 2021. All right. I think DB, you're set to be number 2 on this category.
Okay, well, I will use my visual aid for those watching with the video.
Oh, nice.
So it is my Metroid Dread holiday shirt. Thank you very much. But yes, Metroid Dread is, as a Metroidvania fan, as a Metroid fan, even a little bit of a Mercury Studio, like Castlevania Lords of Shadow isn't bad. It's just derivative. Metroid Dread. I haven't even cracked the plastic on the game, but that's one I regret not playing this year. And even though Swiss kind of teased the fact that it might be one of his most disappointing games, it's still up there on my list of not even taking the time to figure it out if I was excited or disappointed.
I think I don't want you to discourage you. It's a good game, and my boys have like really loved it. I think I was on an episode of the GX show. It was just Tao and I when I discussed this game, but I talked about how I think I discovered I'm a Metroid Prime guy, and I'm not like a Metroidvania guy. And and
that's
I think
fair. That's very fair. And I'm not much of a Metroid Prime guy, so okay, that works.
All right, Tao, I like this pick. It's not what I expected.
So yeah, my pick is Hot Wheels Unleashed. So the racing game came out this year, and before like this even came out, like I kind of seen some stuff. I was like, this, I don't know. Like I used to play, I think what was it, Micro Machines maybe back in the day. the video game, and I was like, oh, maybe it's going to be like that. But there's other games that came out like after that I was like super disappointed in, and I was like, I don't know about this one. But then I've read reviews and I've seen videos, and I'm like, oh man, this looks pretty cool. I haven't got around to it, and also because and I wanted to pick this up for the Xbox. I think it's on Switch too, I believe.
Yeah, it is. It's on Switch with a lot more loading times, but
yeah, probably. But just on the Xbox side, just because I was doing the year of Game Pass this year, other than just the one that I bought that I actually had to buy. I was that was another reason why I kind of did pick up this game, and just I had a ton of other games that I was playing at the same time. But just watching this, the racing and stuff, it looks really cool. It's kind of hard that some of the videos I've seen. So, DB, have you played it?
Yeah, I picked it up over Black Friday for $25, and it's super fun. But it is also hard. Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah. I mean, there's mechanics there make sense in the you are driving a toy car. Like you have a little bit of pitch control once you're up in the air, so you can move yourself, which helps with an angle, but can easily, if you get bumped in the air, you're spinning off, onto
flying off the track.
Yep. And so it's difficult, but it's what I've played of it so far is incredibly rewarding.
Yes. Yeah. The other thing that I thought looked kind of hard is the drifting. It looked a little different than like some other games. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, just from watching people, but I probably have to play it just to see.
I mean, it's not Mario Kart drifting, but it plays in that same type of arcadey genre.
Yes. Yep. So that's my pick. Hot Wheels Unleashed.
That just leaves Game Logic. What do you most regret not playing in 2021?
So, of course, in this day of digital games, we can't really trade any of them in, but, we have done this in years past where people bought physical games that they traded in and regretted not getting back to. But for digital, the game that I picked up or just pulled down and didn't get back to was a Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So I think this game is on EA Play on Game Pass.
Yes, yes it is.
Yeah, so I have it there. I think I also have it on Stadia. I think it was a pro game at some point. So through the multiple ways that I've been able to obtain it, I just haven't spent as much time in it. And it's a good Star Wars story, too, which is something that I feel like I haven't gotten in a while. So yeah, that's it. A related game I also need to get back to or try out is Star Wars Squadrons, which I also have somewhere and a flight control system with which to play it, but I haven't gotten around to even starting that one. And I included it on the list of games this year because it came out 2019 actually.
19 because it won my Storycraft that year. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but I included it on this year because it got a next gen upgrade and there was a big hoopla to do about.
And it's a nice next gen upgrade.
Yeah.
I agree though. I think this category is starting to show its age a little bit. We might have to rephrase it for next year. But Tao, why don't you start us off on Life of the Party or the most fun game?
Yeah, so this is probably going more of the Life of the Party was Gang Beasts. And I played this on Xbox Series X. Kind of like Fall Guys-ish game, but pretty much like at least the one mode that I had played so far. You're just trying to like push everybody off the stage, and just they give you a bunch of different stages. Sometimes it's like just you're on top of a building, and there's like a billboard there, and you kind of start up there, and you kind of throw people down. You can land on the building, and throw them down again. Or there's like this stage where there's like these big metal like cylinders that are spinning with like spikes that you got to throw them into. So it's just kind of a cool, fun party game that I picked up on. I was actually, and it was from Game Pass, or it came out on Game Pass eventually. I don't know if it came out right away on there, if I remember correctly. But yeah, it was super fun game. You get the goofy little costumes too. You can put on your guy and you unlock and stuff like that. So that was my pick, Gang Beasts.
Logic, you picked this is a game you've referenced before.
Yep, so this is kind of a multi-purpose category that the hosts play around with. It can be life of the party, meaning kind of like Tao, I think, was indicating it could be a party game where you could have a bunch of people playing it, or it could just be the most fun game that you played, which is where it fell for me, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy. Not necessarily the favorite game that I played this year. I mean, just in terms of like there are other games that I played that I arguably like more, but in terms of like kind of like DB said, right? The game that I played that I was like belly laughing the most through, that is definitely Guardians of the Galaxy. It is just a laugh a minute, and the stark like quantifiable indicator of that is I have been complaining since The Last of Us 2 came out that this trend of games that started with that one where like the characters are constantly talking and like you literally can't get a thought in your head in edgewise because the people on the screen are constantly yammering. Often in terms of The Last of Us 2 and other games that are like it, not always in a manner that presents useful information, right? But it's just noise. But like every minute that Guardians of the Galaxy that those guys are talking, like it's just it not only is it funny, but I also feel like it reveals more and more of the dynamics of that team and how they feel about each other and kind of the love hate but really love relationship right between all of them that is spoken but unspoken because it's not what actually comes out of their mouths, right? It's revealed in other ways. So that was my most fun game for this year.
Nice. DB.
My most fun game, I think I've approached it the same way this year, is the game I enjoyed the most, and that is Tunchi. So this is a Peruvian indie roguelike beat 'em up. I have dabbled in roguelikes over the last 2 years and learned to love pieces of them, but it's never come together in the right way. I appreciate kind of the run base of Slay the Spire and Monster Train and get the map progression of choosing, a difficult enemy or a healing station or an item. I like the kind of art style of Hades and the action, but that didn't grab me in the same way Tunchi did. And so Tunchi is a cartoony beat 'em up that is also a roguelike, that you're going from board to board and in very much a Slay the Spire type of way, that instead of being battle to battle, that these are your traditional belt scroller beat 'em up. The screen locks in place until you beat all the enemies, and then instead of scrolling a little bit further, you choose a node and go on to the next board. And sometimes that will be a story beat, which is often told with kind of this picture book, almost little golden book like art style to it. Or it is a menu, an item upgrade or a skill upgrade, or more battles. And the challenge I have always had in many rogue-based games, run-based games themselves, is the lack of kind of continuity and progression, that I want to feel like I'm working towards something that even if I have a bad run, I still didn't waste my time. And Tunchi does this for me in that every enemy you defeat, you're collecting orbs from, and those orbs, you need X amount of them to power up your different skills. And so even if you die quickly or you don't get all the way through, I feel like it rewards the quarter munching aspect of its lineage in terms of being a side scroller brawler. And so that's where it's a lot of fun. It's a tightly made game, beautiful art style. Getting through the 3 levels are really long eventually, because if you're doing a successful run, but it is also getting there, and has been, there's 4 characters. I've played it. It could be a little bit of life of the party as well, because I've played it with my sons, because we enjoy a beat 'em up together as a family couch co-op. And so it works well in that way as well. So Tunchi is my most fun game.
When I approach this category, I kind of tend to look at it as like playing with a group of people, or just having more a lighter game. Uh, I get there may have been years when I approached it as most fun that I've had, but I tend to skew with that side of the category. So my pick this year is Mario Golf Super Rush, and mostly because I'm not a fan of the Mario Party games, and that would have been an obvious choice, but I tend to not enjoy myself as much playing those. I find the board game aspect a grind. But with the golf, you got the sports and you get the Mario. I mean, you get Nintendo, so it's usually a good pick to play when you have friends over.
Swiss, this one almost made my most disappointing.
Oh yeah.
Oh, but it was also the third most Switch game I've played all year long, so I still played it quite a bit. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So why don't you stay on? Oh wait, this is the last category. We've reached the end of the line. So our final category, we're forward-looking, and it is most likely to still be playing in 2022. So based on that, DB, I assume that doesn't mean Mario Golf Super Rush is your title this time.
No, it's not. And I was hoping that maybe I would go after somebody else who had my anti-pick here. So my anti-pick is the game I'm most likely to still be playing in 2022 is not Forza Horizon, but is either Hot Wheels Unleashed or Riders Republic. That by the time 2022 is done and I look at my calendar or my game stats on Xbox, I will have put more time into one of those two games. And that's not a knock on Forza Horizon. In some ways, maybe it is because it also feels a lot like 5. I mean, 5 feels like 4.
Because you've already played it 2 iterations before. This is the third time.
I will say that it is. I didn't. 4 and 5 really hit for me. 3 was not as smooth as 4 and 5. And so yes, it does feel very similar. I'm still, driving around occasionally trying to find signs to knock over, but Riders Republic is not drastically different either from Steep or any map-based Ubisoft open world game. It just throws bikes and jetpacks and all kinds of fun extreme sports pieces into it. But I also like a Ubisoft fill in the map type of game. And Hot Wheels Unleashed really hits that arcadey kind of kid in me aspect of, it's a drifting game. It's a lot of fun. It plays with the iconography of Hot Wheels as a kid and the orange tracks and the basements and all the other pieces. And the fact that it's got track sharing online and track creating means that there's tons of things to potentially explore as people keep going with it.
Oh, nice. I didn't know they had the track stuff. It's another good reason to pick that game up.
I think based off of that analysis, we need to let Game Logic go next.
So despite the fact that I threw shade at it, saying that it's another iteration of more of the same that was, kind of not originally even, but like definitely pushed to the fore in Forza Horizon 3, the game that I'm most likely to be playing still next year will be Forza Horizon 5. Like it's still, like I joke about the fact that it's not that much of an evolution beyond 3 and 4, but I'm also the gamer who says I don't necessarily always need a new thing. I just need like more of the same thing that I already know that I like. So I was a huge fan of Forza Horizon 4. Forza Horizon 5 still has the kind of gotcha mechanic of it. You guys have heard me say this over and over and over again. Like, even though I sing the praises of F1 2020 and 2021 with kind of its RPG and management kind of aspects in it, I have also said, now it's different because that's a sport and it's F1, but I said, for the most cases in a driving game, what I need is I need a bunch of cars that I'm allowed to unlock and put in my garage and a bunch of tracks to drive on, right? And I don't really need like FMV like cutscenes, with the guy from Helio from Battlestar Galactica and what's her name, Maria Menounos or whatever, like the Need for Speed series has tried to do, like in my games, right, in my racing games. And Forza provides that experience, right, and it. As much as I push back against the notion of open world driving games back when it was Burnout Paradise, Forza does a good job of. First of all, it does a good job of rewarding you for driving around, right, the landscape, which I used to find really tedious in like Test Drive Unlimited. But Forza does a really great job. They do a great job of it partially because of the sheer beauty of the vistas and the scenery that you drive through. Whereas, Test Drive Unlimited was like Hawaii, and it was like the same roads over and over again, and you might go up a mountain, right? But I mean, Forza Horizon 5 does a really good job of geography and landscaping and really making it interesting, and then you're unlocking roadways as you go by, and it's constantly popping alerts of like, hey, you've unlocked more roadways than Townmaster has, or you've beaten the speed trap, above DBQ speed or whatever. So it keeps it interesting and keeps me engaged.
For my pick, it was pretty easy for me. You have a meaty JRPG that I only started a couple of weeks ago, with an excellent battle system, action game. So it's Near Replicant. I plan on continuing to play it. We'll see if I fall off like I did Death Stranding, just through attrition. But I'm eager to continue in this game, for all the reasons I've stated the previous times I've mentioned it tonight.
Swiss, is this a game that it makes sense for you to run through like more than once? I'm just trying to like.
I think that these Nier games do, right? I don't know if Near Replicant has a lot of endings, but I probably won't, just because once I complete it, like, okay, I've gotten my return on investment, and there's other stuff that's in my queue, but I don't want to just drop it without at least getting through the first run. And then we'll let Tao have the last word.
All right. So I initially put down any VR game, but I'm going to specify two real quick, and that's Legendary Tales, which I talked about not too long ago, which is you're kind of a knight in this kind of going through dungeons, and it's obviously, since it's VR, you got real swordplay and shields that you use, and there's parries and all kinds of things like that. So it's a really fun game. Multiplayer, you can I think I have up to 4 players at once. So which I've only played with one other player so far, so only 2 people. And then the other one is After the Fall, which just came out recently within the last week or 2, I believe, which is like Left 4 Dead, Back 4 Blood type of game. So just hordes of zombies coming at you, but once again, you're in VR, so it's a little bit more immersive. So those are the 2 games that I'll be playing going into 2022 and probably beyond.
Nice. All right. So that'll do it for the 5th annual Superlative Awards for the 2KG Network. I took a look, and there were only 7 titles that we mentioned more than once. Forza Horizon 5 and Guardians of the Galaxy both received 4 awards from us. Death Stranding and Halo Infinite were mentioned 3 times each. And then Hot Wheels Unleashed received 2, and Near Replicant received 2, and WarioWare Get It Together received 2. Everything else was just mentioned 1 time. So we had quite a variety of games and some surprising doubles, I think. But I think if we had to choose, I think so. I guess if there were declared an E2KG Game of the Year, it'd have to be probably Guardians of the Galaxy or Forza Horizon 5.
And in true E2KG fashion, we should leave it as a not declared, but has 2 choices. And yep,
we'll
we
have
write our own rules.
We'll have like the AP and the BCS or whatever back in the day. But yeah, so that it's always cool to see what we have, and I always like the variety. and adding to my Steam wish list. So
I agree, Swiss. Thank you for leading us through this. And gentlemen, I always am very interested every week when we talk about games. And now that hearing what stood out to you over the course of the year is very enjoyable and gives me reasons to come back to things. Hopefully over break.
we'll be back on January 6th and start into year 6 of the E2KG podcast, which is kind of awesome and frightening at the same time. Anyone else? Tau, Game Logic, DB? All right.
We'll see everybody next year.
Yep. Thank you for listening. Take care of each other. Good night.